They hacked my phone for 9 years.
You'd reached the top of your game as a news anchor. Sky News and BBC Breakfast, 6 o'clock news. The youngest people to be in that seat. You won Strictly while you were doing this. You got an OBE.
Why is somebody putting a limit on you? Absolutely not.
You've also kind of been the person delivering the news, but then you've also become the subject of the news.
My tears would just like project over the news desk, and then suddenly the makeup artist would have to redo everything in 2 minutes, and I'd have to regain my composure. People were just like, what are you doing? You know, why have you left? But actually, I didn't want to explain why I'd gone.
You've had some personal, really difficult, challenging moments.
I don't love kind of making myself vulnerable. I don't think I've ever done a podcast before.
And so what I'm kind of interested in is the shape of the story beneath those career headlines.
Where do we start?
It's crazy because you spent like decades delivering certainty to the nation. But there's also a really interesting side to this because you've taken kind of a non-linear path. You've had some sort of like personal, really difficult, challenging moments. And so what I'm kind of interested in is the shape of the story beneath those career headlines, because you've also kind of been the person delivering the news, but then you've also become the subject of the news. And so I'm excited to dive into that. Thank you so much for coming on.
Where do we start?
Doing news anchoring and also doing Strictly. What time were you starting?
So at that point, I was hosting BBC Breakfast with the wonderful Dermot Manahan, and I was starting at, my alarm went off at 3:20. So I was at work at 4 a.m. having a full blow dry, full makeup, the whole thing. And having, read all my briefs the night before, in the studio by about 6:45, or if I was pushing it, 10 to, on air from 6 till 9:30 or 9:15. Then there was a full debrief in the newsroom, probably doing some, emailing and answering some letters, and then going into a dance studio and dancing all day, and then, just falling into bed, just feeling like a bag of broken bones. And that went on for quite a long time. I kept on saying throughout Strictly, please don't vote for me. I don't want to be here next week. I also had a holiday booked halfway through, and I was, that I'd organised long before Strictly came along. And I'd campaigned not to do Strictly Come Dancing for lots of different reasons. But they kept on voting me in, and then by mistake, I won it.
I love that. It just shows, doesn't it? Like you feel like you have to do everything to the very best.
Yeah.
And so, okay, just for people who are super busy, what's your secret for managing that? Because that is the most insane schedule.
I never allow myself to be tired. I literally will never allow myself to be tired. I never yawn, and I just have got masses of energy. Don't know. I've just always had a lot of energy, and I don't need very much sleep. So I just say yes to everything, and then try and work out how to fit it into a day.
You're an inspiration. Okay, so Natasha, we're going to do this thing called Open Book about kind of falling in love with a question. We don't know where our life is going, as you know, as I know.
Yeah.
And so it's all about kind of embracing that uncertainty.
Okay.
And a little bit of mutual vulnerability. So I'm also going to be opening as well. Okay, so you can choose a card.
I see.
These are submitted
I see.
by my audience.
Like this idea.
And neither of us know what's coming. So
okay.
I'm vulnerable
How are you
first.
different? You're vulnerable. I like this idea. You know what? I have to say, I don't like being interviewed, so this is much better asking you questions.
This is the thing, journalists don't like being interviewed.
Yeah.
So this is my job to make you feel comfortable. So Katie, different how I was in my 20s. I think I was much less self-aware. I was living my life, doing the things without realising the pattern behind the things. And so I would say in my 30s, I had
you still look 20, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that.
Yeah. For me, I think I've always been an extremely ambitious person. And I think my ambition has slightly changed now to being much more personally ambitious, trying to find true happiness, one thing. You wouldn't know it, but normally my hair's quite straight. I've just been out in the rain, but my hair in my 20s was really curly.
I mean, it's fabulous. You always have perfect hair.
Today is not a good day for hair. But so my hair was really curly when I was 20. I think I've become much more open. I think because I was kind of schooling myself to be professional, I was probably quite closed. And so I think I'm much more open now. I'm much more open.
I can imagine, because you're in a profession where you have to be a little bit more guarded and not show your emotion, because you're delivering these really serious stories.
Yeah.
And neutral.
And neutral. And that's the job of a newsreader, is to be a vessel of information, not to tell people how they feel about anything. And also to be closed. You don't want your personal life on display. I'm sure we'll cover that in a minute.
See, I'm a little bit of an oversharer, and so I'd find that really difficult, I think. What word would you give this chapter of your life?
Oh my gosh, and not what I expected. Can I, not, no, that question is not what I expected, but actually this is not what I expected for this part of my life either. I guess it's exciting. I've stepped away from a structure, professional structure, and I live a bit more of a portfolio. And that used to be scary, and now it's exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you're in these institutions where you would show up and everyone has kind of like prepared everything within for you. And there's like that's really interesting.
And you?
I think alignment. So last year I felt like I was cracked open in lots of ways, and obviously wouldn't choose to have that experience. But the beauty of that is you can kind of like rebuild which pieces you want to bring back in and how you want to build it. And so with that comes like radical realignment of how do I want to live? What kind of work do I want to do? What people do I want to spend time with? And a total lack of tolerance for anything that's not that.
I think that's amazing, Katie. And I wish I'd had that awareness. I think lots of moments in life give you that opportunity, but it's actually seizing them and rebuilding yourself, because we all go through different chapters of life, don't we? And I've learnt that later on in my life. The fact that you're aware of that right now is brilliant. You've got a head start. Well done.
Well, it's like never waste a crisis, is it? That's what it's
yeah,
saying.
Exactly. Never waste a
it.
crisis. Exactly. Oh,
okay,
gosh,
your turn.
What rule do you live by?
Less of a rule and more, I really hate when someone is building or creating something and people kind of tear it down or talk badly about it, because I feel like people can do things that aren't necessarily to your taste or what you would want. But I just love people who do stuff.
Never leave home without lip gloss.
You always look perfect. I've never seen you like a single hair stray.
No. Okay, that's a bit of a trivial answer, but no. Okay, I always say yes. I'm always up for new adventure, new challenges, excitement, and then work out how to make it happen.
I love that. Okay. I think this is the end of Open Book. Thank you so much for participating.
Oh, there's no more questions. I like that.
Do you want to do more? We've got some more.
Go on, is there one more question? Let's do one more question.
Okay, so I start this one, right?
Okay, go on then.
It's exciting.
This is a way of, diverting.
I know, from the real stuff.
I don't have to answer any questions.
These are good questions.
I'm not stupid,
I like this one. Something people often misunderstand about you.
People are sometimes confounded by women who like to take care of themselves, but then also have a brain. And I think that's, I quite like being that person where sometimes people misunderstand me because I do care about the way I look, and, I care about just presenting myself in the best possible way. But then I'm also can be quite, hard is the wrong word, but I know what.
You're a smart cookie.
Trying to be every now and again.
Ferociously smart. Yeah.
No, with humility, it's nice to actually confound people sometimes when they make an assessment of you that you just look a certain way, but actually to also have a brain is I like that,
And do you think at the beginning, in the earliest years of your career, you underestimated at times?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly as a young news presenter, because I kind of like burst onto the scene. And at that point, I was so lucky because so many doors just opened for me. I didn't ever have to, apply for a job. I just was invited to do these incredible jobs. First of all, I was on regional news. That was the first ever screen test I did, and the only screen test I did. And then suddenly, then I had this job and then this job and this job. And then I was moved to Sky and then I was moved here. And then, before I knew it, I was sitting on the BBC breakfast sofa and I'd only just kind of started. And
you say lucky, but you're obviously very good.
I worked hard. I worked hard, but I was lucky. I the doors just opened for me. So yeah, it was lucky.
But the media back then was a different place to how it is now.
Yeah,
right. Especially I think with women and I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. And I think about, the encounters that I had in various newsrooms that, if that happened these days, with things that were said about the way I looked or the way I appeared or, what I might have said or the things that were said to me, if that kind of thing was said now, it would be front page news. because, women in those days, it was a very different environment. It was not necessarily a happy experience. I loved my job. I was so blessed and so given so many different opportunities, but it wasn't easy being a young woman in what was a very male-dominated world. And I really had to kind of earn my stripes, and I didn't always love having to be tough when actually I just didn't need to be tested in the ways that I was. I remember being in all sorts of newsroom kind of meetings, because there were a series of meetings throughout the day, and my co-presenter, who shall not be named, testing me in front of everybody, trying to humiliate me about, sorry, just remind me how many landlocked countries there are in Africa. Or just remind me, the name of the prime ministers in their serving order, or just things like that, just to try and make me look stupid in front of my peers and expose me. Can you imagine that these days? Or sexual comments that were written on, we used to have this news system where this top line would come out, and, so things that various editors might have sent to me that were not appropriate, and these days you just would not be tolerated. And in those days I didn't particularly want to tolerate them either, but what could I do?
It was a different culture. This is tough. I remember when I started in advertising, it was kind of the tail end of that world, but I definitely got a few years of that vibe.
Yeah.
You obviously made your way to the top in that environment. What do you think worked well for you?
I just put my head down and worked hard. I really, really worked hard. Getting up at 3:20 every morning. And quite often I would then be working in the evening as well, because I had lots of opportunities to host events and things like that. I'd quite often, be in Manchester at 11 o'clock at night and still be in the newsroom at 4 a.m. by getting in a car with a duvet and a pillow and just sleeping, and then suddenly just being at work again. I worked really, really hard. I felt so lucky to have the opportunities. I didn't want to waste any of them. So going back to what I said earlier, yes, what's the question? Very good at this, by the way, just so that I'm going to give you midway feedback. You're good at this.
Thank you. Afterwards, I want tips from you.
No, you're not going to get any apart from you're brilliant. But I tell you why, because I've interviewed thousands of people over the years, probably. Definitely hundreds.
Who's the best person you ever interviewed?
You. But seriously, yes. I always have notes and questions. And where are your notes?
I do have them, but I'm trying not to. What I did earlier?
I always have my notes with me. I like notes. They're kind of like a comfort blanket. Even if I never look at them, I've still got them. So
I will check
I'm
them.
giving you 10 out of 10 so far.
You described having phone hacking happen to you, right? Could you talk a little bit about because what's really interesting about this is you're part of the news, and then you become the subject of it.
They hacked my phone for 9 years.
Oh my God. Yeah. The invasion of that.
The invasion of it, and not understanding quite what was happening. So this was a period when I was at BBC Breakfast still. I'd newly been married. I had just completed Strictly Come Dancing and won it. And I would frequently sit on the news sofa in the morning, and there'd be a newspaper review, and I'd be maybe not on the front pages, but definitely on page 3, which is like the next page you don't want to be on.
Was it personal stories?
Very personal stories. There are plenty of people who have done the roles that, have held the roles that I've held, and really loved the attention and the fame, and lots of people go into television to be famous. That was never what I wanted. I actually really loved the job. I felt so privileged to be in that position. I've never sold a story about myself. I've been offered huge amounts of money to, sell my wedding or my babies or whatever, like vast sums. And I've never, ever chased fame. And so when Strictly Come Dancing came my way, I really didn't want to do that programme, because I felt like it was going to open up a part of me that I didn't necessarily want to share, and give me a platform that I wasn't necessarily looking for.
So why did you do it? Because you really didn't want to.
I put under a huge amount of pressure to do Strictly Come Dancing.
By
lots of people within the industry, my agents. Right. It was because, it was a brand new programme. It was a new format. They needed it to be successful. I was very anxious about doing Strictly Come Dancing. and, you know, was put under a lot of pressure by lots of people. Anyway, I ended up doing it. Once I signed the contract, I still desperately didn't want to do it, and then tried to break my ankle, which hilariously I recently did. If it was like 20 years later. But, you know, at the time I did try to break my ankle. I was trying to fall off the curb. You know, I was trying desperately not to do Strictly. I just tried everything. But anyway, I did do it. But it
That's so classic.
Yeah, but it did put me in an arena, you know, a shiny floor dancing program. You know, you have to be so careful as a woman in that world. And I wanted to be taken seriously. And suddenly there I was on a Saturday night in these tiny little outfits, you know, looking like I was wearing a bit of curtain fringing, you know, trying to dance. I mean, it was just, I was mortified, and get people to vote for me. It felt like a complete anathema to what, you know, it felt like the opposite of what I was trying to be during my day job, was then exposing myself on a dance floor on a Saturday night.
Do you feel like it did change people's perception of you, changed negatively, or was it positive?
Well, probably but both. But no, that meant that I had to reveal a lot of myself, you know, making yourself vulnerable on a Saturday night, asking people to vote for you in front of 12 million people, you know, wasn't particularly part of the plan. But yeah, at that point, I think I then became interesting to the newspapers. And it wasn't until years later that I realised that my phone was being hacked. But suddenly all these stories kept appearing about my wedding and who I'd been with. And there was one weekend I remember before I was married where I was supposedly out with 3 different men that weekend, including Tony Benn, who very sadly has since died. And actually Tony and I were really amazing friends. We had a wonderful friendship, but I wasn't out with him that weekend. And at the same time I was out with, do you know, and it was just difficult. It was difficult for somebody that actually was very, very private. Suddenly there was a lot of personal information. And then there was a period where, you know, I was miscarrying a lot. Where, you know, I'd been married, I was miscarrying, and suddenly I was having to trade lots of stories about myself in order that my miscarriages weren't in the newspapers.
Are you serious?
That's how it works. You know, if you don't want things, you have to give, you know, if you don't want information about yourself to be in the newspapers, you have to give something else.
Wait, explain this, because this is wild. So someone gets in contact with you, a journalist, and goes,
At that point, I had to have a publicity person just to manage all the news stories that were about me. You know, I had to have somebody that was retained to control the stories because they were coming from everywhere and I couldn't work out why.
And so your publicist would say to you, they're about to publish a story about your miscarriage.
Yeah.
We need to give them something else.
Yeah.
And you've just had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Or
I would be in the newsroom and I'd just be going in to host the 6 o'clock news, and the phone would ring on the news desk. And I'd say, you know, Natasha Kaplinsky, whatever it is. And it would be a woman. On this particular occasion, it was a woman. And it was 10 minutes before I was about to go on air. And she just said, I just want to say how terribly sorry I am to hear that you've just lost your baby. And that was obviously designed to totally unsettle me, you know, just before a national news bulletin, you know, just about to present in front of, you know, the nation. And somebody did that. And I can't understand what they were trying to do at that point. But it was obviously to, you know, destabilise and unsettle me. And, you know, my tears would just like project over the news desk. And then suddenly the makeup artist would have to redo everything in 2 minutes and I'd have to regain my composure because, you know, my hormones were all over the place and I was, you know, really devastated at that point. And yeah, I mean, yeah. But so, yeah, your question was about suddenly becoming the news when you're actually trying to present without any emotion. That was not easy.
And how did you hold that together? Because one thing, like going to your day job when you've had a miscarriage and going into the office, and there's another to be on camera to the public. That is really hard.
I think you just have to lean into your professionalism at that point. It was just like, you know, there's a part of me that is quite steely when it comes to being under pressure. And so if somebody's trying to unsettle me, I'm usually quite strong.
And it's not, there are some other stories as well. So when you moved over to Channel 5 for a sort of record-breaking deal, that also made the headlines. And I think you being a woman made it a bigger deal than if it had been a man. Do you agree? Like, what was that like as well?
I think that was a crazy salary. And, you know, actually I moved to Channel 5 because I was miscarrying so much and I just felt like I needed to, you know, take a step back from the pressure of being at the BBC, and that gave me...
Was it a big difference would that have made a big difference moving from BBC to Channel 5?
Not necessarily, but I needed a big operation. I needed some time out, and so it just all came at the same time, and so it just felt like the right decision to make. So I did take some time out. I had, as I said, an operation, and then I kind of reset myself. And then there were billboards of me all over the country, news with personality, Natasha Kaplinsky, and this huge, ridiculous, no, I shouldn't say that. It was a very generous, lovely salary. But it was, I was embarrassed that my salary was all over the newspapers. And billboards everywhere. And then suddenly I was pregnant, and I started this new job pregnant. And then that was very hard, because it had been a personal ambition of mine, obviously, to have a healthy pregnancy and a child, thank God. But I'd just taken on this huge job. There was so much kind of attention around whether or not I was going to be able to double the viewing figures and all the rest of it. Oh, and I had to then tell my bosses that I was pregnant. But, thanks to the phone hacking, they did it for me, which was very, very, very difficult, because I hadn't yet got to my 3-month marker in the pregnancy. And I woke up, I remember opening the curtains and seeing 16 photographers outside my house with, on ladders and all sorts of things, and then having to go into work and explain that actually I was pregnant and I hadn't yet started the job. So that was really difficult time, and that was because my phone was being hacked. But yeah, it was a very uncomfortable period of my career, and particularly because nobody knew at that point that the phone hacking was happening, and so I was accusing my friends of my friends, my family. I remember phoning up the medical clinics and just berating them for releasing my personal medical information. And of course, it wasn't anybody. It was journalists who were listening to my phone messages, which is just completely outrageous.
And was it during the Leveson inquiry when everything came out? Is that when?
So I was part of a test case with Elizabeth Hurley and Sienna Miller, I think. Yeah. So there was, I think, 8 or 16 of us. I can't remember. It was quite a long time ago now, where it was the test case to see whether or not we would end up, getting an apology, which was really important for me.
I can't imagine having that kind of exposure to your personal phone bills. It's crazy. Mm. And then you walked away. So you had this glittering career as a news anchor. You'd reached the top of your game. You'd push through these horrible experiences, and you'd stayed steely and strong. And then you pivoted. Why?
I think it's something about achieving an ambition a bit too quick. I always wanted to read the 6 o'clock news at the BBC. That was my goal. And I got there, quite fast.
How old were you when you...
I think I was still 20-something. Maybe 30, but I was young, like you. I was beautiful in those days. Yeah, exactly, without all the wrinkles.
Stop it.
But, I got there a bit too fast. And then I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do now? As it happened at that time, you've just explained that I then, left for medical reasons, essentially. And at the time, I was so heavily criticised that I'd gone for the money, but actually I didn't want to explain why I'd gone. I'd gone because I needed to reset my life. Yeah, that's where I stepped out of the newsroom. And that was quite a frightening experience. When you had these guardrails up, I was in this amazing organisation representing, years of experience, and suddenly stepping out of newsrooms and finding myself not alone, but making my own rules, which feels a little bit cliched, but just following my own path then. People were just like, what are you doing? Why have you left the safety of a newsroom with a career that just kept on blossoming for you, and then doing something completely what could have appeared left field? And that felt quite frightening, but it also felt really important to fulfill that part of my life.
I can imagine you felt a little bit untethered.
Very untethered, and I think, when people have worked in organisations, certainly that are renowned globally, it feels frightening to take a step out. But when you're in an organisation like that, like the BBC, I mean, I was so proud to represent the BBC. You know, every passport control, you know, where do you work? The BBC. You know, everyone knows the BBC. You kind of feel like there's only the BBC. But actually, there are so many opportunities outside of your immediate comfort zone. And it's not until you take that step off
that you
realise. And it takes a while sometimes. And I think there is that safety net that you need to just kind of break free of occasionally in life, because you never know where you're going to go next.
And for people who might be either grappling with that decision, like they're in a comfortable, shiny sort of like logo place and they know that they're kind of ready for a change, or maybe they've made the change and it's feeling really uncomfortable. Because I used to work at one of the best ad agencies in the world, and like saying the name was just it gave you like an immediate shortcut to people. And when you shift away from that, there's an identity shift that you have to wrestle with. What do you think helped you in that journey?
I think it's about self-discovery at that point, isn't it? I think, you know, it is unsettling, it is unnerving, it is frightening, but it's all about growth. You know, I've got friends that have worked for the same company for however many years, and absolutely no judgment on them. But I've always moved, you know, and I've always changed. I've always kind of not quite rebirthed myself, but, you know, I've always challenged myself to make changes and try something different.
Where do you think that comes from? That, and also like the steeliness that you said you have?
The steeliness comes from life not always being easy, and, you know, is you know, maybe just accepting that there's only one person that's going to look after yourself, and that's yourself, you know, and having tough times and having to really dig deep. And maybe the ambition thrown in is just like, I'm not going to let somebody not beat me in a competitive way. It's just like, you have to look after yourself. Maybe a bit of bullying when I was little, and just realizing that, okay, fine, you might have this power over me now, but, you know, you're going to be in my wake. Yeah, you're going to be in my wake. I think that's probably what drove me when I was younger. It's just like, okay, fine, this is not nice now, but just wait. You know, yeah, just wait.
You experienced something pretty horrific, which you've talked about in your personal life, where you were on a family holiday. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, this was, you know, one of those moments in life where I genuinely felt like it was a lesson. I don't really know why it happened, but you know, we were on a boat on a holiday, and there was a terrible accident, and the boat caught fire, it blew up.
So you were on like a what kind of boat was it?
It was like a day boat, you know, just so there's just six. So yeah, there were my whole family, so 3 generations of one family. And we were, you know, very deep out in the ocean, and the boat blew up. I mean, just, you know, the boat blew up. And
just out of nowhere?
Yeah, there was a fault. You know, it was just one random accident. But at the time, we were all in the water, and it took a long time for people to rescue us and find us. And it was just one of those moments where I just knew that it was a life lesson. And knowing that I was having to learn something from a really, really difficult experience was hard. But I was aware that it was a lesson as it was happening. You know, it was quite a bizarre experience, you know, in amongst the terrible physical pain, because I was very badly injured.
What were the injuries like?
Basically had my face blown off and lost all my hair and my eyelashes and all the rest of it. And it was very hard seeing, you know, the suffering that my family endured around me as well.
So your daughter got quite badly injured as well? Yeah. It's funny you say that about, you feel like you know that there's something, you're being taught something, because I remember the beginning of last year dealing with intense grief, coming back to a job that kind of wasn't there anymore because my company was making a load of redundancies. Like I was sitting there being like, wow, okay, like this is.
I think you sometimes have to sit in it, don't you? And you just realize that you can't go around it. You've just actually got to go through it. And, you know, it's not easy times, and it's where you dig deep and grow. But when you're in the middle of a challenge like that, and I'm so sorry that you have had so much sadness in your life, but you've grown through it, haven't you? You've found a peace somehow to cope with that grief and that sadness.
And you went through a phase of kind of healing from that. I remember you saying you like covered your mirrors, and then you went down a route of EMD. Did you do EMDR?
Mm-hmm.
Which I've done as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, because I'm really interested in this, how did you like find connecting back to your body as a way of healing from this? Because a lot of people are quite skeptical.
The thing is, I was a mother at the time, and my priority at that point, I remember being in the water and just looking at my daughter and just thinking, I've had my life, it's about her now. I've been lucky. I've had an amazing career, and I didn't, of course, couldn't see what was happening to me because I could just feel it all. And just, it was just about getting her and the rest of the family through. So EMDR was because I just couldn't stop crying. I felt like there was this huge lesson that I had to learn about being on a burning boat. What was that? It felt religious. It was extraordinary. And I couldn't sleep because I was constantly Googling, trying to work out the symbolism of what actually had happened to us. And what I needed to learn from it. I was so determined that it was a lesson.
To find a meaning.
What the meaning was behind it.
Looking back, do you know what that was?
I do actually now. I think it was actually about love. I know that's a really crazy thing to say. At the time, it didn't feel like it. But the love that we received was just so profound. I was questioning my faith at the time. And it was about love and kindness of strangers. Because the number of people that just reached out. And I think that's one of the lessons that, I constantly remind myself that when I hear of somebody who's suffered or is suffering, is never hold back, always reach out when somebody, even if you don't know them, if you've got any empathy for how they're experiencing what they're going through, is always to reach out. And it just teaches you, humility, doesn't it? That you don't know what people are dealing with. If somebody's, angry in the car and hooting at you, you don't know what they're dealing with that day. And just to be aware that there is so much suffering in the world. I think it was love at the end of all of that. I couldn't work it out for a long time, but that's where I'm landing.
Looking ahead, like where what are you excited about? What's
the next
chapter?
Excited. This is the problem, because I've got so much energy. I had to stop myself yesterday, kind of offering myself to this board that needs a bit of help. My problem is I just feel like there's just not enough time. There are so many things to throw yourself into, oneself into. So going back to what we said at the beginning, the answer is yes. What's the question? To try and say yes to as many things as possible. There are so many extraordinary people in the world. There are so many places to discover. There are so many people to facilitate, to help. There's so much to learn. There's so much to experience, to try and make every day really, really count, and to try and spend time with people. They're the most interesting part of any day, is meeting people, sitting with you here, learning how good you are at your job. I mean, you've done this brilliantly. It's not easy interviewing somebody, and you've just done it so seamlessly. It's a joy to see that side of you, the professionalism. And I really wish you the very best of luck with this podcast, because you deserve to absolutely rock it.
Thank you so much. It's honestly, it's just amazing interviewing you. I feel like it was intimidating, but
don't be ridiculous. Not at all.
It needs to be professional, but
the difficult thing for me is actually answering questions, because my job is to ask the questions. Don't love kind of making myself vulnerable on the other side.
But as you say, like looking ahead, loving the questions, both literally and also in life, is what this is about. And so, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask you a last question? What are you looking forward to? Because this was too many, right? I think I've spoken way too much about myself.
At that
can we
lunch,
do like the whole interview again? And now I ask you the questions.
Okay, wait, we're going to do a rapid fire. What's your super strength?
Oh, no sleep.
Yeah. Oh my God. I need to learn how you do this.
Yeah. What's yours?
Okay. When I'm like really in a creative project, I get like obsessive. Okay. If your friends described you in 3 words, what would they be?
Energetic, empathetic, and I cry a lot.
Favorite person you've ever interviewed?
Do you know what? I was going to say George Clooney, but actually that was just really annoying because he's too beautiful. Yeah, I remember interviewing these amazing couple called Barbara and Ray Ragg, and they'd won huge amounts of money. This isn't rapid fire, is it? I'm talking again.
No, that's okay.
Okay, never mind.
No, do it.
And they'd won huge amounts of money, and they just spent their time giving it away. And I love them for that.
Amazing.
They just use their money to facilitate others.
Radical kindness. That's incredible. Best piece of advice anyone gave you?
Never accept no for an answer. And I think I said that to you. I never accept no. Why is somebody putting a limit on you? Absolutely not.